We're at our last two talks of our webinar, so welcome back. It's our desire that you guys have these breaks because I don't know, it's hard for me, it's hard for Anita to just sit in a chair for like 8 hours straight. So these breaks are hopefully helpful for you guys to be able to get up and walk around, take a bio break, whatever you need. So our next speaker is Laura Pottorff, who is the director of Colorado Seed Programs. Laura is at Colorado State University, and she oversees seed certification, foundation seed, the Colorado Seed Lab, and seed educational programs, including CSU's seed technology and online education programs, also known as STEP. She has experience in the seed regulatory world, extension, seed pathology, seed field inspection work, and is currently working to improve CSU's legacy virtual seed herbarium, seedimages.com. That is an excellent website name. Laura was raised in Denver and received her bachelor's and master's degrees in botany and plant pathology from Colorado State University. And Laura's going to talk to us today about creating a seed herbarium. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank all the speakers before me. I've enjoyed being able to participate and listen today as well. So I was asked to talk about herbarium, a seed herbarium, and I will do that, but I thought it would be best perhaps to talk about seed herbaria in the context of how are they the same, how are they different from seed libraries and seed banks. There are some overlapping commonalities that these three entities have, and all three of them are representing a diversity of plant communities. They are all collections that are storing species, and all of these collections need to be identified, as previous speakers have alluded to and talked about how they label them, which is so important in our communication for the folks who want to utilize the resources within seed libraries, seed banks, and herbarium. So as you've already heard, libraries focus on a community involvement and distribution of the seeds. Herbaria are slightly different. Even though they're a collection, they are specifically used for scientific study, education, and documentation. So they are a reference. And distribution of the seeds within an herbarium, that's not what their purpose is. I'm sure you can, overlap some of these definitions that I have and utilize, the qualities of an herbaria in your seed library, but, I wanted to focus on the strict differences. Seed banks are aimed at preservation of genetic diversity and long-term cold storage. So really cold temperatures, as was, when photos of the National Seed Storage Lab in Fort Collins shown, and the storage in -18 degrees. So just to expand on this a little bit more before we get into some other topics regarding herbaria, this is a standardized and authenticated collection of seeds used for comparison and identification purposes. It's a reference library focused often on seed trade and often on the commercial agricultural industry, seed industry. But as you'll see, a reference library can be used for any purpose in any aspect of seed collections and seed saving as well. These herbaria are traditionally used to study taxonomy, morphology, and ecology of seeds. And again, traditionally, they are primarily used for research purposes, but also educational purposes in terms of how to identify seeds that are separated from their mother plants. And then again, just to reiterate what a seed bank is, and this is important for those of us that work in university settings and are associated with seed laboratories. Seed laboratories are different than seed banks. Seed herbarium are different than seed banks. And the seed bank, the purpose is a depository, a collection stored under controlled conditions to maintain their viability for many, many years, used to safeguard the plant species against extinction, ensure biodiversity. And again, those seeds are stored in very cold and dry environments. So again, herbaria are different in that their purpose is not distribution. Their purpose is reference. So traditionally, seed herbaria are, something that those folks who work in seed laboratories have been referred to by other speakers prior to me, in that the seed laboratory is a lab that would handle samples that you send them so that you can understand the germination or viability of seeds that you want to package and distribute so that I would say, consumer or the end user. They may not be a consumer in the strict economic sense of the word, but so that the end user understands the quality of the seeds and what the potential germination would be. And so these herbaria are typically examples of seeds that are commonly encountered in a region, either in agriculture or maybe for native seeds or maybe noxious weeds. And these seeds are stored in vials. They're labeled so that those working or needing access to these reference collections can see them, take them out of the vial, put them under a microscope if they have it, or use a hand lens so they can see the features of the seed and then compare their reference sample to an unknown seed that may have been contributed to a seed library, for example, or may be a potential contaminant in seed that might have been purchased for a particular use. These are typically the physical specimens, as I mentioned. They're accurately identified by family, genus, species, and they're organized maybe alphabetically, maybe according to a phylogenetic grouping, or maybe, they're organized in a way that serves the user best. It's totally optional about how they're organized, just so that they can be used as a reference. Now, a typical seed library in this context is really not widely available to large numbers of folks. And so we also have digital and virtual libraries. But regardless of the format, whether it's a physical specimen or a virtual library with just photos, the intent and the data, the information that is collected and combined with that specimen are very similar. So I mentioned a little bit earlier that seeds separated from the mother plant might be a little challenging and might be a little difficult to identify. So we utilize certain characteristics of seeds to identify them, such as their size, their shape, the texture, their color, and then there may be structures, anatomical structures on the seed that help folks identify and separate one genus of seeds from another. So we're gonna channel your inner botanist is what we're doing here in the seed herbarium. Now, the photo that I have here as an example, this is dodder, that's the common name, or Cuscuta species, and that is a parasitic plant. And it is often a contaminant in some of the agricultural seeds that are in trade. So it's important in trade that these seeds might be identified before a seed is packaged and distributed so that the negative context seed in this case, the parasitic plant, is not distributed with the seed that is wanted to be distributed, the crop seed, for example. So this, like I said, it doesn't have to be a physical sample of the seed. It could be a visual sample of the seed. Sometimes the virtual or visual picture is much better. It's the equipment used to take the photo is allowing us to see the seed at higher magnification. And so this is an advantage of a virtual seed herbaria compared to a physical seed herbaria. They both have positives to them. Now, if an herbarium is made up of high quality photos, then the access, and those photos are accessible online on the web, then access is much wider. And those utilizing these virtual herbaria may still need to have microscopes available to them, and at the very least, hand lenses available so that the structures, the textures, and the colors can be viewed a little bit better. And I mentioned some of the structures. So the seed you're seeing here is bean. And, similar to the black-eyed peas that we see, you'll see this structure here, which we call a hilum. And all seeds have a hilum. This is the attachment point. It's kind of a scar. This is where the seed was originally attached to the mother plant so that nutrients could move from the mother plant to the seed itself during development. And some seeds, that hilum is much more visible than others. And so it's an example of an anatomical feature that we can utilize to identify the genus and hopefully species of the seed. So as technology improves over time, access to microscopes that can take really high quality photographs, high magnification photographs, are one of the benefits of having a seed herbarium that's virtual. Now, as I say, we're going to channel our inner botanist so that the vocabulary we use to identify seeds, just like the vocabulary we use to identify plants, is something that is learned, just like you might learn Spanish or a second language. This is something that botanists and folks who deal with plants and animals and biology often have to learn as well. And so, we have seeds that are elliptic in shape, lenticular in shape, obovate. So an upside, I guess the pointy end of the egg is attached to the plant. An oval seed shape, an ovate seed shape. So that's the opposite where the wide end of the egg is attached to the plant, or spatulate, for example. So this is how we begin to separate and identify one seed from another. And I will eventually, shortly here, get to why this is so important. Now, not only do we look at the seed shape, we also look at the type of the seed. Again, vocabulary terms that we use. Seeds and the fruiting material that they may still be associated with are also very, very helpful for us to separate one type of seed from another. So all seeds are true seeds, but some of these true seeds, so here we have a bean, and that is a true seed. Its fruit is a pod, so a legume. but we normally don't see the pod or the legume. We only see the true seed. A samara is a wing seed, and if we were able to remove the wings within this red area here, we would see the true seed. So this is a samara of an anemone in the Ranunculaceae family. Seeds in the Asteraceae family, as well as a few others, have a seed or fruit and seed type called an achene. So a sunflower is a really great example of this, where if you've eaten sunflowers, you know that you'll crack the seed coat, or what is really the achene, and then the true seed will be inside that. Grains like wheat are a caryopsis that are enclosed by a lemma and a palea. And a silique is a long and slender fruit type in the mustard with brassicas. And a silicle is short and broad. So again, these are botanical terms that some of you may be very familiar with, and we use these to help us distinguish one seed from another, as well as textures. There's so much beauty in the world of seeds. They're smooth. They may be glandular with these minute little glands or spheres on them. They may have hairs or pubescence. They may have these tough little points and rough points on their surface, or those stiff hairs, or strigus is how we refer to that, as well as tuberculate or protruding spines. So we're using these types of identification characteristics to help us, again, identify the seed. In a seed herbaria, just as you would in a seed library, you will have a label associated or attached to the specimen, typically with the botanical name, genus and species, perhaps the family. It was already mentioned that common names sometimes get us into trouble because if you use butterfly plant or butterfly weed as an example, there's a lot more than one. So our seed lab manager, Randy Crowell, often says, toads are not frogs and dolphins are not fish. And so we have to be pretty careful when using common names. It's certainly fine to include those in with your data, but to make sure that the botanical genus and species name and family, if at all possible, are collected at the same time. The same type of information that you might see on the label associated with seed in the library, the date it was collected, who collected it, the location, the habitat, a tracking number, and notes on the identification characteristics are really important. And in our virtual seed herbarium, seedimages.com, we have the photo, and then we have what we call the fact sheet with it. So the scientific name, the family, and all those characteristics that we were talking about a second ago, the shape, the width, the length, the color, other characteristics that might stand out. This is Indian paintbrush. Again, the type of seed type is a keen, very similar to what we find in the Asteraceae, although this is not the same family, but we see common seed types that may, associate themselves with certain families. And then underneath this outer covering or keen, we'll see the true seed. Now, there's more than one virtual seed herbaria out there. So seedimages.com is the one that I'm partial with because it was developed by Colorado State University, but there are others out there. And this one is from USDA. It's part of their ITP tools. And there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to actually begin to take the information that we have in seedimages.com and to move it into the USDA platform. our seedimages.com is behind a paywall, and so the USDA information is free. And so that we have a collaborative program going on where we're going to try to combine or share our information with USDA so that it is available to more folks for no charge. But you'll see that the same type of information is collected, the type of seed, the texture, the surface, the size. What are the identification characteristics that one might use to determine, oh, this seed that I have that's separated from the mother plant, and I don't know what that mother plant is. I might have lost the information that came in with it to my seed library, for example, or the person submitting these seeds to me didn't collect any information and doesn't know what they are. So then we could utilize these types of resources to then solve that mystery. What family is this seed in? And then perhaps be able to go further to determine the genus and species. So as I said, we have seedimages.com. If you're interested in finding out more about that, you can go to the link here. The USDA ITP tools, if you're interested in checking that out, is linked here. And then there's a third virtual seederberry that is funded by the International Seed Morphology Association in Canada. And these two the USDA and the ISMA sites only go to family, where seedimages.com will actually go to genus and species. So we come to an intersection between community involvement, seed education, and documentation. And this is where I think that, hopefully you'll get ideas, how might you be able to incorporate Cedarberry in with the community education and education about seeds in general that you may be involved with on the seed library side. And one, I wanted to give some examples that we've seen in the past as to why identifying seeds is important. Because a lot of times the seeds that we end up with in one, scenario or another are separated from those mother plants. And there are fewer and fewer people in the world that have the ability to identify the seed without the mother plant. And so for me, in 2020, during the pandemic, some of you may have experienced this as well. All of a sudden, all these seeds began to come in the mail to folks that were unsolicited. And USDA, of course, got involved. They were very alarmed because, when seeds come in from out of the country, so these were not U.S. originated seeds. They were coming into the U.S. from other countries. China was one of them, as well as a few others. And when those seeds come in hidden in or disguised as wire or jewelry, they don't go through the proper customs process. And so there was a lot of alarm here. So some of you may have received these. We can probably tell from here that this looks like a squash seed. This is the one on the left. The seeds here that are real dark, without knowing and seeing and handling them, they look like they might be sunflower seeds, but no one knew for sure. And then the seed that's down here on the bottom on the ruler, I honestly can't see what that one is. It's unclear to me. But we learned lessons from this, that unsolicited can mean something negative. This is why USDA was, that there could be disease, there could be insects, and there could be noxious weed seeds that are either, fully contained in these packets or perhaps contaminated. And also as an educator in agriculture, horticulture, and seeds, I was surprised by those who would call us and ask questions and say they already planted them. And so, again, it's not always a bad thing to plant what you don't know, but in general practice, one really shouldn't plant what they don't know unless it's under some type of a controlled environment where you can, make sure it doesn't escape or cause harm. Again, why is the identification so important? And this has nothing to do with the mystery seeds that, we experienced in 2020, but for what might be occurring, in a seed library, perhaps, maybe not. But there are different noxious weed designations to different plants or different species depending upon where you're located. So a noxious weed seed list or weed list in Colorado might be slightly different than the noxious weed list or noxious weed seed list in Kansas or in New Jersey, for example, so that when you obtain samples or seeds that might be donated and they're not marked, and you don't have the background and you don't know what the mother plant looks like, you can see in these two examples here with the purple loosestrife, which is noxious in Colorado, you can see what those seeds look like on the left, and then compare that to the Brassica lepidium species or watercress here. When we see these seeds under higher magnifications, we can tell they're different. But, for those of us that may not be as well versed in the, experience of identifying seeds based on their anatomical characteristics, these may look very, very much the same, even though the habitat that they grow in is different. And the look of the mature plant and the flowering plant is very, very different. So this is why we want to, again, think about having a reference sample, a reference collection that might be something that you have space to create in a seed laboratory or a seed library, excuse me, or at least access some of these virtual seed herbaria um, online. Another example, a couple of the native plants that are prevalent in the Southwest. Again, if we were collecting seeds from these plants in the wild, we would have no problem identifying, that they're different, that they are, one is the globe mallow and one is a Selene compacta. But if the person collecting did not obtain the proper documentation and we were just looking at the seeds themselves, again, I chose these two because they're similar in their shape. They have a reniform or a kidney shape, yet we can tell that they're different, but I don't know what they are until I go to my reference collection or to an online herbaria to confirm what they are. The gardener, the farmer, the member of your seed library, your seed saving community, is relying upon the information that you are given and then you verify on your own and you put on that label. They may expect tomatoes, and yet when they plant the seeds, they may get peppers instead. Now, that is not necessarily something that is completely negative. It just depends on the species that we might be confusing and that look alike. So now this is a commercial example, and but it was one that caused quite an economic negative to the folks involved. But identification is important in not just the commercial seed world, but everywhere. In this particular example, this is onion. And so this is onion field that was established with seed. And the farmer expected the globose shaped onion because the market they had in Mexico demanded this globo shape onion. And yet what was in the actual seed packages and bags and containers that they purchased was also a different variety. And so half of the field ended up being this torpedo shape. Now, again, this may not be a big deal in some communities, but in this particular situation, in this commercial setting, this particular grower was set to lose hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars because the market in Mexico would not accept this torpedo shaped onion and would only accept the globo shaped onion. So again, reasons that identification is really, really important. Now, others have said this much more eloquently than I will say it, but seeds are incredibly important. Seeds are incredibly beautiful and distinct. They shaped our history, they shape our future, they nourish us, they unite us. And Thor Hansen, he's an author that I've enjoyed reading, he says that seeds give us a tangible connection between the past and the future. And so it's important to honor that. I've appreciated hearing what others before me have said, and I really honor and value those thoughts. Um, but let's make sure that when we do our best to properly identify the seeds that are in our libraries, develop your own seed herbaria as a reference collection, not for distribution, but as something that you can use for educational events to, again, use as a reference to make sure that something that may come in that you're not quite sure is identified properly, refer to your seed collection in your seed herbaria. They can, just be seeds of all the examples of seeds that you have in your collection. They could be a collection of noxious weed seeds to help educate the public about those. And as I mentioned already, that another author that I honor as well is someone who said failure to correctly identify an organism can lead to spurious conclusions and ultimately to inappropriate and ineffective legislation, management, and policy tools from local to global scales. So don't forget about the correct identity of the seeds that you're sharing with the community. And with that, I just wanted to put in a plug for some of the educational courses that we have online. We have the Seed Technology and Education program at CSU, which focuses on seed quality, so germination techniques, identifying seeds, so seed anatomy, storage of seeds, seed metabolism. And then we have a brand new online conditioning and quality assurance course. So this has to do with seed processing. It's geared more towards commercial agriculture, but I think you may find a lot of very good information that can be applied to your communities as well. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura. I don't see any questions right now in the chat if anybody has anything they want